Hello, and a huge welcome to the channel. If you're looking for cross-dressing stories that are emotional, intriguing, and truly empowering, you've come to the right place. The click of the front door was a sound I should have registered. It was a Tuesday afternoon, a day like any other, which meant my sister Maya shouldn't have been anywhere near my apartment. She had her own studio, her own life, her own schedule that rarely intersected with my 9-to-5 from home existence as a programmer. But the sound was swallowed by the soft whisper of nylon against my skin and the pounding of my own heart in my ears, a frantic drumbeat of shame and exhilaration. My dearest little brother, is that my lingerie you're wearing? Maya's voice, laced with a familiar teasing quality, but underscored by genuine surprise, sliced through my private world. I froze. My eyes were fixed on the reflection in my full-length bedroom mirror, a stranger staring back at me. It was me, Jordan, a 28-year-old man with a decent build and a job that required more interaction with code than with people. But the man in the mirror was draped in contradictions. He was wearing a black lace bra, one I'd borrowed from Maya's laundry basket weeks ago and had never worked up the nerve to return. It was a delicate thing. All intricate floral patterns and sheer fabric. It did nothing for my flat, masculine chest, of course, except create a phantom sensation. The tight band constricted my ribs just enough to make me constantly aware of it, and the lace, slightly scratchy against my skin, was a persistent, thrilling reminder of what I was doing. Below it, I wore a short flared skirt, the kind a cheerleader might wear, its cotton fabric light and airy. It stopped high on my thighs, exposing legs that were still stubbornly masculine, though I'd spent an hour painstakingly shaving them the night before. The sensation of the soft fabric brushing against my newly smooth skin was electric. A strange combination of freedom and intense vulnerability. My blood ran cold, then hot. I spun around, my hand instinctively flying down to tug at the hem of the skirt. A useless gesture of modesty. It was too late. Everything was already seen. Maya, what? What are you doing here? You didn't knock. My voice came out as a strangled squeak, betraying the panic that was seizing my lungs. My face felt like it was on fire. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. Maya, 5 years my senior and a freelance fashion designer, didn't look angry. She didn't look disgusted. She just looked curious. She leaned against the doorframe, her stylishly cut bob framing a face that was a softer, more elegant version of my own. Her eyes, the same deep brown as mine, took in the entire scene: the bra, the skirt, the terrified look on my face. I had a fitting cancelled downtown. Thought I'd surprise you for a late lunch, she said, her voice calm. She pushed off the doorframe and stepped into the room, gently closing the door behind her. The click of the latch sounded like a gavel, sealing my fate. Didn't expect to find this. She gestured vaguely at me, a small, non-judgmental wave of her hand. She walked over to my unmade bed and sat on the edge, patting the space beside her. Come on, sit down, Jordan. You look like you're about to pass out. My legs felt like lead, but I managed to shuffle over and sit, perching on the very edge of the mattress. I couldn't look at her. I stared at my own hands, which were trembling in my lap. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the hum of my computer in the corner. So, she began, her tone gentle. Want to tell me what's going on? The question hung in the air, a lifeline I wasn't sure I deserved. Part of me wanted to lie, to make up some ridiculous story about a costume party or a lost bet. But looking at the sincere curiosity in my sister's eyes, I knew I couldn't. The secret had become a physical weight, a pressure in my chest that had been building for years. Maybe this was the moment it was meant to burst. A sob caught in my throat. I don't know, I whispered, the words barely audible. It started in college, just curiosity, I guess. I told her everything. It tumbled out of me in a messy, disjointed confession. It began with a pair of panties stolen from a dorm laundry room, The thrill of wearing them under my jeans, a secret no one else knew. It was a silent rebellion against the constant pressure to be a certain kind of man, strong, assertive, confident, qualities I felt I was only pretending to have, in private. The soft fabrics and forbidden garments offered a strange kind of comfort. "It's the feeling," I tried to explain, finally daring to look at her. My voice was shaky, thick with unshed tears. "This lace, it's not soft. Not really. It's a little rough. And it makes me so aware of my own skin, the way the skirt moves when I walk. It feels like my body isn't mine anymore. Or maybe it feels more like mine than it ever has before." My mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Shame was the strongest, a hot, suffocating blanket that made me want to rip the clothes off and hide. But underneath it, a tiny, fragile sense of relief was beginning to sprout. I had told someone. The secret was out, and the world hadn't ended. Maya was still here, still looking at me, not with pity or disgust, but with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. It looked like understanding. She listened patiently, not interrupting once, when I finally ran out of words, my confession hanging in the quiet room. She simply nodded. Then she did something that completely surprised me. She scooted closer and wrapped her arms around me, pulling me into a hug. I was stiff at first, my body rigid with shock and shame. Her embrace was warm and solid. I could feel my own body trembling under the thin layers of lace and cotton. Slowly, tentatively, I relaxed into her hold, resting my head on her shoulder as the tension finally broke. The tears I'd been holding back began to fall, silent and hot against her blouse. "It's okay, Jordan," she murmured, her hand stroking my back in a soothing rhythm. "It's okay. I'm not mad. I'm not even that surprised. To be honest, you were always the sensitive one." I pulled back, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. "You're not." She shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "I'm a fashion designer. I see how clothes can be armor, or a costume, or an expression of who you really are inside. This is just another form of that." She paused, her eyes meeting mine. "We're going to figure this out. Together. But we're going to do it the right way. No more sneaking around with my old underwear. Okay. If you're going to do this, you're going to do it with style." Her words were so unexpected, so full of acceptance, that I let out a wet, choked laugh. The crushing weight of my secret, which I had carried alone for nearly a decade, began to lift. It wasn't just a weird, shameful habit anymore. It was something my sister knew about, something she was offering to help me explore. My fear, which had been a roaring inferno just minutes ago, was beginning to subside, leaving behind the warm embers of hope. This wasn't an ending. It was a terrifying, exhilarating beginning. A week later, I found myself standing in the doorway of Maya's apartment, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm against my ribs. Her place was a reflection of her personality, an open-plan loft with high ceilings, exposed brick walls, and a controlled chaos of fabric swatches, sketches, and half-finished garments draped over mannequins. It smelled of jasmine incense and hot coffee. This was her world, a world of texture, color, and form, and I felt like an intruder in my drab jeans and grey t-shirt. "Don't just stand there like a gargoyle," she said, pulling me inside with a laugh. "The sanctuary awaits." She led me to a room at the back of the loft. It was her walk-in closet and studio, a space easily the size of my entire living room. Racks of clothing lined 3 walls, organized meticulously by color and style. A large, ornate mirror stood in one corner, flanked by professional vanity lights. It was both overwhelming and strangely comforting. It was a space designed for transformation. "Okay, rule number 1, Maya announced, striking a pose with her hands on her hips. "We start simple. The goal today isn't to turn you into a supermodel. It's to get you comfortable with different fabrics and fits. to understand how they feel and how they change the way you move. I nodded, feeling like a nervous student on the first day of school. So, strip, she said, turning to one of the racks. My face flushed. Here. Yes, here, she said without looking back, her voice matter of fact. I'm your sister, Jordan, and right now, I'm your stylist. There's nothing I haven't seen before. Now lose the sad boy clothes. Taking a deep breath, I pulled off my t-shirt and kicked off my sneakers, then hesitated before unbuttoning my jeans. It felt profoundly weird to be standing in my boxer shorts in the middle of this hyper-feminine space. Maya, however, paid me no mind. She was busy pulling items from the rack. Her brow furrowed in concentration. All right, let's try this, she said. Turning around, she held up a simple white silk blouse and a pair of dark wash denim shorts. They were women's shorts, cut higher on the thigh and designed to hug the hips. She handed them to me. The silk was impossibly light and cool in my hands. I slipped the blouse on, and the sensation was immediate and startling. The fabric didn't just sit on my skin. It flowed over it. A cool, liquid caress across my shoulders and chest. It was so different from the rough cotton of my usual shirts. This felt delicate. It makes me feel thinner, I whispered, more to myself than to her. I ran my hands down my arms, feeling the smooth material. Like my body is less solid, like it could just dissolve into the fabric. Maya smiled, a knowing, gentle smile. That's what good fabric does. It changes your perception of yourself. Now, the shorts. The shorts were a different story. I pulled them on, and they were snug. Much snugger than any pants I had ever owned. They hugged my hips and thighs, creating a defined shape where my men's jeans would normally hang loose. The fit was restrictive, but in a way that was strangely pleasant. It forced me to stand up straighter, to be more conscious of my posture. The fabric was a soft, worn denim, and the short inseam left most of my thighs exposed. I felt naked, even though I was more clothed than I had been in Maya's lingerie. Okay, I said, my voice a little shaky. Now what? Now, you walk, she instructed, gesturing to the open space in the middle of the room. Walk to the mirror and back. Pay attention to how it feels. Does it chafe? Does it pull? How does the fabric move against your skin? I took a tentative step, the sensation of my thighs rubbing together, encased in the soft denim, was a new and distracting feeling. I was used to the free-swinging stride of a man wearing loose pants. This required smaller, more deliberate steps. I walked to the mirror, my movements awkward and stiff. The person in the reflection was a strange hybrid. My face, my short hair, my broad shoulders were all undeniably me, Jordan. But the silk blouse softened my upper body, and the shorts highlighted a curve to my hips I'd never noticed before. You look good, Jordan, Maya said softly from behind me. You look elegant. I turned back to her, a blush creeping up my neck. I feel awkward. Of course you do. It's new, she said. But you're learning. What are you thinking right now? The question opened the floodgates of my inner monologue. I'm thinking about how the silk feels cold when I'm still but warms up when I move. I'm thinking about how the zipper on these shorts presses into my stomach. I'm thinking about how I always felt. Clumsy in my own body. Like it was too big. Too angular. I was never good at sports. Never felt like one of the guys. I always felt like I was performing masculinity and failing. I looked down at myself, at the soft blouse and the fitted shorts. This feels different. It doesn't feel like me, but it doesn't feel wrong either. It feels like a possibility. Maya came over and stood in front of me. She reached out and adjusted the collar of the silk blouse, her fingers brushing lightly against the skin of my neck. The touch was brief and professional, but it sent a jolt through me. It was an intimate gesture, a moment of quiet care that made my breath catch in my throat. I felt my face flush again. But this time, I didn't look away. You're not failing, Jordan, she said, her eyes serious. You're just exploring. and that's perfectly okay. In that moment, the shame that had been my constant companion for so long began to recede, replaced by a fragile but persistent curiosity. Maya wasn't just giving me clothes. She was giving me permission. Permission to feel, to explore, to question. This first lesson wasn't about fashion at all. It was about learning to inhabit my own skin in a way I never had before. The next few weeks were a series of experiments. We tried different outfits, different styles, all within the safety of Maya's loft. There were flowing maxi skirts that made me feel graceful, form-fitting knit dresses that made me acutely aware of every line of my body, and soft cashmere sweaters that felt like a hug. Each session was a lesson in sensation and self-perception. The initial awkwardness began to fade, replaced by a growing excitement for our weekly fittings. One Saturday afternoon, I arrived at Maya's to find a different energy in the air. The lights were dimmed, and a bottle of wine was open on her coffee table. "Are you ready for the next step?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with an excitement that was both thrilling and terrifying. "We've built the foundation. Tonight, we do the full renovation. Tonight, you're not just Jordan trying on clothes. Tonight, we create Jade." Jade. She had mentioned the name once before, a casual suggestion that I had brushed off. But hearing it now, it sounded less like a joke and more like a promise, a name for the person I saw glimpses of in the mirror. My heart hammered against my ribs. I think so." "Good," she said, grabbing my hand and pulling me toward her studio. "Because I went shopping." Laid out on a velvet chaise lounge was an ensemble that made me gasp. It was a floor-length evening gown in a deep, vibrant crimson. The fabric was a heavy satin that shimmered under the lights. Beside it was a pair of black stiletto heels, a small, elegant clutch, and most intimidating of all, a long, wavy brunette wig on a styrofoam head. The process began with something far more fundamental than clothes. "Bathroom, now," she commanded, handing me a brand new razor and a can of shaving cream. Jade does not have hairy legs. An hour later, I emerged from the bathroom, my legs feeling strangely bare and sensitive. The sensation of the cool air on my freshly shaved skin was a shock to the system. I felt exposed, vulnerable, but also incredibly smooth and clean, like a blank canvas. "Perfect," Maya declared. "Now sit." She guided me to the vanity chair in front of the large, lighted mirror. For the next hour, she worked with a focused intensity I'd only ever seen her apply to her design sketches. She started with foundation, the cool liquid blending away my imperfections, softening the hard angles of my jaw. Then came the eyeshadow, the eyeliner that made my eyes seem larger and more expressive, and mascara that made my lashes look longer and darker. Each brushstroke was a strange, tickling sensation, an act of transformation that felt both alien and intimate. The final touch was a bold, crimson lipstick that matched the gown. When she was done, she handed me a hand mirror. I stared at the face looking back at me, and for a moment, I didn't recognize myself. It was my bone structure, my eyes, but they had been softened, enhanced, and feminized. The person in the mirror wasn't Jordan anymore. Next came the wig. Maya carefully fitted it over my short hair, and suddenly, a cascade of soft, dark waves was tumbling over my shoulders, framing my newly made-up face. I reached up and touched it, marveling at the silky texture. The weight of the hair on my neck and back was a new sensation, one that made me instinctively tilt my head in a way that felt foreign, yet surprisingly natural. Finally, it was time for the dress. The heavy satin was cool against my skin as I stepped into it. Maya zipped it up the back, and the fabric pulled taut, hugging my torso and waist. I had been wearing breast-form silicone pads that Maya had ordered online, and the dress was cut to accommodate and enhance them, creating the convincing illusion of a full bust. The gown was sleeveless, exposing my arms and shoulders, and a daringly high slit ran up one side, designed to reveal a flash of leg. "I feel heavy," I breathed, looking at my reflection. "But in a good way. The fabric is so substantial. It's like armor. It's forcing me to be aware of my hips, my chest, things I never think about. The final challenge was the shoes. The heels were at least 4 inches high. Getting them on was easy enough, but standing up was another matter. I wobbled, grabbing onto the back of the chair for support. My entire body was thrown into a new alignment. My weight shifted forward, my posture forced upright. Small steps. Maya coached. Heel, then toe, swing your hips a little. I took a few clumsy, lurching steps, feeling like a newborn foal, but slowly. I found a rhythm. The initial pain in the balls of my feet gave way to a strange sense of power. The height was intoxicating. I was literally looking at the world from a different perspective. Maya clapped her hands, her face beaming. "Jade," she said, her voice full of pride. "You are absolutely stunning." She put on some soft jazz music and led me out into the main living area. "Let's dance," she said, holding out her hand. My first instinct was to refuse, to protest that I couldn't possibly dance in these shoes. But then I looked at her, and I looked at my reflection in the dark windows of the loft, and I thought, why not? I took her hand. She placed my other hand on her waist and rested hers on my shoulder. We began to sway gently to the music. Her guidance was firm but gentle, leading me through the simple steps. I could feel the warmth of her hand through the thin satin of my dress. The scent of her perfume mingled with the new, floral scent of the one she'd spritzed on me earlier. The moment felt suspended in time. A strange and beautiful blend of sisterly affection and something else. Something new and unnameable that was born of this shared intimacy. As we moved slowly around the room, I caught sight of our reflection again. I didn't see a brother and a sister. I saw 2 women, one confident and graceful, the other hesitant but learning. Her crimson dress swirling around her ankles. In that moment, the internal conflict that had plagued me for years seemed to quiet. There wasn't Jordan and his shameful secret. There was just Jade, dancing in the soft light of her sister's apartment, feeling beautiful for the very first time. After the triumph of the evening gown, living as Jade within the confines of Maya's loft began to feel like a dress rehearsal for a play that would never open. The confidence I felt as Jade was real, but it was a fragile thing. Cultivated in a safe house, Maya, ever the pragmatist, knew this. "You can't stay in the nest forever, little bird," she said one afternoon, a mischievous glint in her eye. "It's time for your first flight." My stomach immediately tied itself into a knot of pure terror. "Outside? You want me to go outside?" "Like this?" "Not like this," she said, gesturing to the casual lounge dress I was wearing. "A 4-inch heel and a satin gown might be a bit much for a stroll in the park, but yes, outside, in the daylight, with people." The challenge was laid down, and as much as it terrified me, a part of me knew she was right. What was the point of discovering Jade if she was doomed to be a prisoner? We spent the next hour planning the excursion with the precision of a military operation. The objective, a quiet walk through a nearby park and back. The time late afternoon, when the light was soft and the crowds were thinning. The uniform was crucial. We settled on something intentionally understated and feminine, a knee-length summer dress with a delicate floral pattern. The chiffon fabric was light and airy, designed to catch the breeze. It was far less structured than the evening gown, offering less to hide behind. Underneath, I wore simple flats, a major concession to my novice status, and Maya gave me a wide-brimmed sun hat and a pair of large sunglasses. "They're your best friends," she said, adjusting the sunglasses on my nose. "They create an air of mystery and, more importantly, they stop you from making panicked eye contact with every single person you see." Getting ready was a ritual thick with anxiety. Shaving, makeup, wig. It was familiar now, but this time it felt different. Every step was shadowed by the knowledge that this creation would be subjected to public scrutiny. As I slipped the dress over my head, the light chiffon felt like gossamer against my skin. When a breeze from the open window drifted in, the skirt billowed around my legs. The sensation was one of complete exposure. "I feel vulnerable," I admitted, my voice tight. It's like anyone could just look right through this fabric, right through me. Good, Maya said simply. Embrace it, now. Grab your purse. The purse was another new accessory. It felt awkward in my hand, a useless but necessary prop. Clutching its strap became my anchor as we stepped out of her apartment building and into the blindingly bright, terrifyingly normal world. Every sound was magnified, the rumble of traffic, the chatter of passers-by, the distant laughter of children. I was convinced that every eye was on me, that a giant neon sign was flashing above my head. Screaming "man in a dress," I kept my head down, focusing on the rhythm of my steps in the unfamiliar flats, my knuckles white as I gripped the purse strap. Maya walked beside me, maintaining a stream of casual chatter about her latest design project, her voice a calming presence in the storm of my anxiety. We entered the park, and the concrete gave way to grass and trees. The sounds of the city softened. I started to breathe a little easier. I dared to lift my head, looking at the world from behind the safety of my dark lenses. People were walking their dogs, jogging, sitting on benches reading. And none of them were looking at me. Or, if they were, it was just a passing glance, the same kind of casual observation they gave everyone else. The crushing weight of my self-consciousness began to lighten, just a fraction. Then, it happened. We were walking along a path near the rose garden when a young man, probably a college student, jogged toward us. He slowed as he approached, a friendly, slightly breathless smile on his face. "Excuse me," he said, directing his question to me. "Sorry to bother you, but do you know if there's a water fountain near here?" My entire body went rigid. He was talking to me, to Jade. He saw a woman. My mouth went dry. My carefully constructed persona felt like it was about to shatter into a million pieces. I opened my mouth, and what came out was a high-pitched, strangled sound that was neither male nor female. Maya, sensing my panic, stepped in smoothly. "I think there's one just past the bridge over there," she said, pointing. "Ugh. Oh, great. Thanks so much," he said, giving me one last charming smile before jogging off. "Have a nice day, ladies." Ladies. The word echoed in my head. He had called me a lady. The interaction couldn't have lasted more than 20 seconds, but it left me reeling. We walked in silence for a few minutes before I finally found my voice. "My voice," I croaked, horrified. I sounded like a dying bird. Maya laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "You were nervous. It's fine. But he saw you, Jordan. He saw a woman." I was caught in a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. On one hand, I was profoundly embarrassed. I had been put on the spot and had failed to produce a convincing feminine voice. The shame of being an imposter was acute, but underneath that, a secret, undeniable thrill was coursing through me. For a brief, shining moment, I had passed. I had been accepted at face value. The validation was a potent, addictive drug. When we got back to the safety of Maya's apartment, I collapsed onto her sofa, my entire body humming with leftover adrenaline. I was so scared, I admitted, pulling off the wig and letting my scalp breathe. But there was a part of me. When that guy smiled at me, I kind of liked it. I looked at her, my confession feeling both shameful and liberating. "Is that weird?" "No, Jordan," she said, sitting beside me and putting a comforting hand on my shoulder. "It's not weird at all. It's human. You spent your whole life feeling invisible or out of place. For a second out there, you were seen. And you were seen as beautiful." The experience hadn't built my confidence in the way I expected. It hadn't made me feel invincible. Instead, it had cracked open my carefully guarded exterior and shown me just how much I craved acceptance. The world outside was a lion's den, but for a fleeting moment, I had walked through it unscathed, and the roar I had been so afraid of had sounded, for just a second, like a purr. The walk in the park was a turning point. It had proven that Jade could exist outside the safe confines of Maya's apartment. The experience, as terrifying as it was, had planted a seed of ambition in me, I wanted more. I wanted to know what it would feel like not just to visit Jade's world, but to live in it. I have an idea, I told Maya one evening, my voice trembling slightly with the audacity of my own proposal. I work from home. My team is scattered across the country. We only ever communicate through Slack and the occasional video call, and my camera is almost always broken. Maya raised an eyebrow, a slow smile spreading across her face. Go on. I want to try it, I said, the words tumbling out. For 1 week. I want to live as Jade. Not just for a few hours in the evening. From the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. I want to see who she is when she's not just a costume for a special occasion. Maya's smile widened. I think that's the bravest thing I've ever heard you say. Let's do it. And so, Project Chimera, as we jokingly called it, began the Sunday before my week-long experiment. Maya helped me move a week's worth of Jade's wardrobe into my apartment. We transformed my sterile, masculine space into a softer, more accommodating environment. We bought flowers, a few scented candles, and even a new, silkier set of bed sheets. On Monday morning, my alarm went off at 7, as usual, but instead of rolling out of bed and throwing on a pair of sweatpants to go make coffee, I began a new ritual. I showered, shaved my face and legs with meticulous care, and then sat at the small vanity we had set up in my bedroom. I applied a more subdued, daytime makeup look foundation, a touch of blush, mascara, and a neutral lip gloss. I slipped into a comfortable but distinctly feminine outfit, a pair of soft, stretchy black leggings and an oversized pale pink cashmere sweater. The final touch was the wig, which I pinned back from my face. Looking in the mirror, I saw Jade, but a different version of her. This wasn't the glamorous creature from Maya's loft or the nervous girl in the park. This was Jade at home, Jade ready to answer emails. The first few hours were surreal. I sat at my desk, the soft cashmere brushing against my arms, the leggings a second skin on my legs. My fingers flew across the keyboard, writing lines of code, the same work I did every day. But everything felt different. I was hyper-aware of my body. The way I sat felt different. I found myself crossing my legs at the ankle. The way I held my coffee mug seemed more delicate. The physical sensations of my clothes, the softness of the sweater, the cling of the leggings were a constant reminder that I was inhabiting a new role. It felt like I was wearing a subtle, beautiful suit of armor. On Tuesday, I upped the ante. I chose a more professional outfit, a navy blue pencil skirt that hugged my hips and fell to my knees, paired with a simple cream-colored blouse. The skirt was constricting. It forced me to take smaller steps when I walked to the kitchen, and when I sat. I had to be mindful of how I arranged my legs. The blouse was made of a crisp, cool cotton that felt formal and efficient. This was Jade, the professional. The outfit made me feel powerful, but also fragile. The polished facade felt like it could crack at any moment. That moment almost came on Wednesday afternoon. I was deep in concentration, debugging a particularly nasty piece of code, when a notification popped up on my screen. It was an unscheduled video call from my project manager. Mark! Panic, cold and absolute, seized me. My webcam was unplugged, but Mark was persistent. A Slack message followed instantly. Hey Jordan, you there? Need to show you something on the server real quick. Hop on. My heart was a jackhammer in my chest. I was in full makeup. I was wearing a soft floral print A-line dress. There was no way to hide it. My mind raced, searching for an excuse. I typed a frantic message to Maya Code Redwork video call. My hands trembled as I typed back to Mark. Hey. Sorry, mic's working, but my webcam just died for good this time. Total hardware failure. Can you screen share? The seconds that followed were the longest of my life. I watched the Mark is typing, notification appear and disappear. Finally, his reply came. Ah, classic. No worries, sharing my screen now. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. my body slumping in relief. I spent the next 10 minutes discussing server permissions and database queries, my voice a carefully controlled, neutral monotone, all while my floral print skirt was spread delicately over my lap. The dissonance was staggering. I was performing my masculine job while living in a feminine reality, and the two worlds had nearly collided. That night, when Maya came over with takeout, I broke down. The stress of the near miss, combined with the emotional exhaustion of living a double life so intensely, was too much. "I can't do this," I sobbed, burying my face in my hands. The tears smudged my carefully applied mascara. "It's too hard. Who am I? Maya? Am I Jordan, the programmer who has to lie about his webcam? Or am I Jade, this person who feels so right, but is terrified of being discovered?" Maya didn't say anything at first. She just sat next to me on the couch and pulled me into a hug, letting me cry it out. She held me, her arms a strong, steady presence, until my sobs subsided into sniffles. "You're both," she said softly, her voice full of a wisdom that seemed far beyond her years. "You're Jordan, and you're Jade. You don't have to choose. Maybe they're not two different people. Maybe they're just two different sides of the same beautiful, complicated person." Her words hit me with the force of a revelation. All this time, I had seen it as a conflict, a choice between two opposing identities. But Maya was offering a third option: integration, reconciliation. Jordan wasn't a lie, and Jade wasn't a costume. They were both me. I looked up at her, my tear-stained face a mess. "You really think so?" "I know so," she said, giving me a gentle squeeze. "The goal isn't to get rid of one of them. It's to figure out how they can live together. And you're doing it. Jordan, this whole week, you've been doing it." In that moment, a profound sense of peace settled over me. The internal war I had been fighting for so long suddenly seemed pointless. I wasn't a man pretending to be a woman. I was a person, exploring the full spectrum of my identity. The woman in the mirror wasn't an illusion. She was a reflection of a part of my soul that I had finally allowed to see the light of day. The week-long experiment as Jade, despite its terrifying near miss, fundamentally changed me. The internal conflict that had been the soundtrack to my life for so long had quieted, replaced by a tentative harmony. Jordan and Jade were no longer at war. They were in a delicate dance, and I was finally learning the steps. Maya saw the change in me. The furtive shame was gone, replaced by a quiet, growing confidence. She decided it was time for the next, and perhaps most important, step in my journey. "There's something you should see," she said one evening, showing me a website on her tablet. It was for a local LGBTQ+ community center that hosted a monthly social event. It wasn't a wild party, but a low-key gathering for people across the gender spectrum and their allies. "You're not the only person in the world on a journey like this, Jordan. It's time you met some fellow travelers." The idea of being in a room full of strangers, while still intimidating, didn't trigger the same visceral panic it once would have. The thought of meeting others who might understand, who wouldn't see me as a freak or a fraud, was a powerful lure. "Okay," I said, my voice steady. "Let's go." The night of the social. I took my time getting ready. This transformation felt different. It wasn't about creating a convincing illusion for the outside world or experimenting in private. It was about presenting my most authentic self to a community that might finally understand. I chose a shimmering, knee-length cocktail dress covered in deep blue sequins. It was bold, celebratory. As I slipped it on, the thousands of tiny sequins felt cool and textured against my skin. A delightful, rustling armor. With every movement, the dress caught the light, sparkling and shifting. The sensation wasn't one of hiding, but of shining. This wasn't a costume, it was an expression. "I don't feel nervous anymore," I remarked to Maya as I adjusted a stray curl of my wig. "Or, not in the same way. It's not fear, it's anticipation." The sequins whispered as I moved, a sound that felt like freedom. This dress, it feels like me. It feels like I'm finally letting my own light show. Walking into the community center was like stepping into another world. The room was filled with a diverse crowd of people, chatting and laughing. There was no judgment in the air, only a palpable sense of acceptance and camaraderie. For the first time, I felt I could let my guard down completely. I was Jade, and here, that was more than enough. Maya, my ever-loyal guardian angel, stayed by my side, introducing me to a few people she knew. The conversations were easy, natural. I talked about my job as a programmer, and no one batted an eye. I listened to their stories, stories of discovery, of struggle, of joy. I wasn't an anomaly, I was part of a tapestry. Later in the evening, I was standing by myself for a moment, just taking it all in, when a man with kind eyes and a warm smile approached me. He was around my age, dressed in a simple but stylish button-down shirt. "I love your dress," he said, his voice genuine. "You look like a starry night." I felt a blush rise to my cheeks, but it was a warm, pleasant sensation, not the hot flush of shame I was so used to. "Thank you," I said, and this time, my voice came out smooth and confident, a practiced, softer version of my old tone. "I'm Jade." "I'm Alex," he replied. "It's nice to meet you, Jade." We talked for what felt like hours. We talked about books, about terrible sci-fi movies, about the challenges of finding good coffee. He never once asked intrusive questions. He simply accepted me as I was, a woman in a sequined dress named Jade. The conversation was light, easy, and refreshingly normal. It was a kind of gentle, flirtatious dance, an exploration of connection without pressure. It was a glimpse into a future I had never allowed myself to imagine, a future where Jade could not only exist, but could also connect, laugh, and maybe even be desired for who she was. As the evening wound down, Maya found me, her expression soft and proud. "You look happy," she observed. I turned to look at her, a real, unforced smile spreading across my face. "I am," I said, and the truth of that simple statement resonated deep in my soul. "Thank you, Maya, for everything. You didn't just open your closet to me. You opened the world." She just squeezed my hand, her love and support an unspoken promise. Driving home that night, I looked at my reflection in the car window. The city lights blurred behind the image of a woman with dark, wavy hair and a smile that reached her eyes. The journey was far from over. There would still be difficult days, moments of doubt, and the constant negotiation of living between two names, two presentations. But the war within me was over. The shame had been exorcised, replaced by a quiet, resilient pride. And I was Jordan, the programmer. I was Jade, the woman who loved sequins. I was not one or the other, but both. Finally whole. And for the first time. As I looked ahead at the road unfolding before me, I wasn't afraid of where it might lead. I was ready for the future, ready to greet it, in heels or in sneakers, as my complete self. The week after the community social, my phone buzzed with a text message. "Hey Jade, it's Alex from the center. I was wondering if you might be free to get coffee sometime this weekend." No pressure if not. I stared at the screen, my heart doing a complicated flip in my chest. It was one thing to be Jade in the safety of a dedicated community space. It was another thing entirely to be Jade on a date. This was a new frontier, more terrifying in its intimacy than the anonymous walk in the park. This wasn't about passing. It was about being seen. I typed and deleted my response a dozen times before settling on a simple, "I'd love that." The day of the date, a Saturday afternoon. I was a bundle of nerves. What did Jade wear for coffee? The sequin dress was too much. The evening gown was absurd. This called for something different, something real. I settled on a soft, charcoal grey cashmere sweater dress that ended just above my knees. paired with thick black tights and a pair of stylish but sensible ankle boots with a low, chunky heel. It felt elegant but comfortable. A statement of quiet confidence rather than a dazzling performance. The makeup was softer, too, less about transformation and more about enhancement. As I applied a coat of mascara, I looked into my own eyes in the mirror and whispered, "You can do this." It wasn't a question. We met at a cozy, independent coffee shop downtown, the kind with mismatched armchairs and the rich smell of roasted beans in the air. Alex was already there, sitting at a small table near the window. He stood up when he saw me, his smile just as warm and genuine as I remembered. "Hi," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "You look amazing." "Thanks," I replied, my voice thankfully steady. "So do you." The first 20 minutes were filled with the easy, pleasant chatter of a typical first date. We talked about our jobs, his as a graphic designer, mine as a programmer. We discovered a shared love for old black and white movies and a mutual disdain for cilantro. He was funny, attentive, and he listened in a way that made me feel like I was the only person in the room. But, as the conversation flowed, a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. He was getting to know Jade, this curated, carefully presented version of me. He didn't know about Jordan. He didn't know about the years of hiding, the fear, the complex reality of my life. The silence about my past felt like a lie, and it was growing heavier with every passing minute. I knew, if this was going to go anywhere, if I was ever going to build something real with someone, I had to be honest. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I placed my hands on the table. "Alex," I began, my heart pounding against my ribs. "I'm really enjoying this. And because of that, there's something you should know about me." He put his own coffee cup down, giving me his full attention. His expression was open, curious, not apprehensive. "Okay," he said calmly. "The person you see now, Jade, she's the most authentic version of myself I've ever been." I explained, the words feeling clumsy and inadequate. But my journey to becoming her has been a long one. I was assigned male at birth. For most of my life, I've lived as a man named Jordan. I finished, my confession hanging in the air between us. I braced myself for the flicker of confusion, the polite but sudden withdrawal, the awkward excuse to leave. I watched his face for any sign of rejection. Instead, he just nodded slowly, absorbing my words. He was quiet for a long moment, and it was the most agonizing silence of my life. Then, he reached across the table and gently placed his hand over mine. His touch was warm and firm. "Thank you for telling me," he said, his voice soft and sincere. His eyes met mine, and they were filled with a startling depth of understanding. "That must have taken a lot of courage. I'm not going to pretend I understand everything about what that's like, but I'm honored that you trusted me enough to share it. I came here today to get to know Jade, and that's still what I want to do." The knot of anxiety in my stomach didn't just loosen, it dissolved completely, washed away by a wave of profound relief that was so intense, it made my eyes well up with tears. I blinked them back, a wobbly smile forming on my lips. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay." The rest of the date was different. A new layer of intimacy had been forged between us, built on a foundation of honesty and acceptance. When he walked me to my car later, a comfortable silence settled between us. "I'd really like to see you again, Jade," he said as we stood on the sidewalk. "I'd like that too," I replied, my voice full of a genuine warmth that had nothing to do with performance. He didn't try to kiss me. Instead, he just gave my hand a gentle squeeze before he left. As I drove home, I kept replaying the moment in my mind. He saw me. All of me. The complicated history, the carefully constructed present, the uncertain future. And he didn't run. He reached across the table and took my hand. For the first time, I felt the possibility of a future where I wouldn't just be accepted, but cherished. My relationship with Alex blossomed over the next few months. Our dates became a regular, wonderful part of my life. With him, I was just Jade. He was attracted to the person I was, and my gender identity was simply a part of my story, not the entire book. His acceptance gave me a new kind of courage, a courage that began to bleed into other areas of my life. The biggest remaining source of anxiety was my job. The broken webcam excuse was wearing thin, and the constant, low-grade fear of being discovered was a drain on my mental energy. Every video call invitation sent a jolt of panic through me. I was living an authentic life in the evenings and on weekends, but from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, I was still hiding in the digital shadows. The dissonance became unbearable. I had faced my sister. I had faced the public. I had faced a potential romantic partner. The last bastion of fear was my professional life. One Tuesday morning, after a particularly stressful call where I had to feign audio issues to avoid speaking too much, I made a decision. I couldn't live like this anymore. The peace I had found as Jade was worth more than the perceived safety of my career. I spent my entire lunch break composing an email. It was the most carefully worded document of my life. I addressed it to my direct manager, Mark, and a representative from Human Resources I'd found on the company intranet. Subject: personal update and request for support. Dear Mark Arn, OIHR, I am writing to you today to share a personal update. I am a transgender woman. My name is Jade, and my pronouns are she, her. This is a significant part of my identity, and I am beginning the process of aligning my public and professional life with my true self. Moving forward, I would like to be addressed as Jade in all work-related communications and systems. I understand this may be new information, and I am happy to work with you and HR to ensure a smooth and professional transition. My commitment to my work and my team remains unchanged. I am proud of the work I do here, and I look forward to continuing to contribute as my authentic self. Thank you for your understanding and support. Sincerely, Jade Jordan Miller. My finger hovered over the send button for a full 5 minutes. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. There was no going back. I squeezed my eyes shut and clicked. The response came faster than I expected. Within an hour, I had a reply from the HR representative, acknowledging my email and scheduling a video meeting for the following morning with herself and Mark. Webcams on. Please, the invitation read. That night, I was a wreck. Even Alex's calming presence over the phone could only do so much. The next morning, I got ready for work with the precision of a soldier preparing for battle. I chose a simple but professional navy blue sheath dress, put on my wig, and applied my makeup with a steady hand. If this was going to be the day my career ended, I would face it as Jade. I logged into the call, my camera on, and my heart in my throat. Mark and the HR rep, a woman named Sarah, appeared on the screen. Their faces were neutral, professional. "Good morning, Jordan," Mark began, then immediately corrected himself. "Apologies." "Good morning, Jade." "Good morning," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah, the HR rep, took the lead. Her tone was calm and matter-of-fact. "Jade, thank you so much for your email and for trusting us with this information. I want to assure you that this is a safe and supportive workplace. We have clear policies against discrimination of any kind. Our first priority here is you and your well-being." I stared at the screen, stunned into silence. "Your work has always been exceptional," Mark added, a small genuine smile on his face. "That's what's important. Frankly, I'm just glad your webcam is finally fixed. It'll be nice to actually see who I'm talking to." They spent the next 30 minutes outlining the plan. HR would handle the official name change in the system. Mark would inform our immediate team in a brief, professional manner before our next stand-up meeting. They asked me how I wanted to handle it, what I was comfortable with. They put the power entirely in my hands. When the call ended, I just sat at my desk, staring at my own face reflected in the dark screen. The relief was so overwhelming. It felt like a physical weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The two halves of my life, which I had kept so carefully, so exhaustingly separate, could finally merge. The next day, at our team meeting, I turned on my camera. There were a few surprised blinks, but Mark led the way, starting the meeting with a simple, "Good morning, everyone. As you'll see, Jordan will be going by Jade from now on. Now, let's get to the updates on the server migration." And just like that, it was done. The world didn't end. My colleagues were professional, respectful. The work continued. But for me, everything had changed. I could finally sit at my desk, the sunlight streaming in from the window, and just be. I was Jade, the programmer, and it was wonderful. 6 months passed. The vibrant, terrifying newness of my life began to settle into a comfortable, joyful rhythm. My apartment, once a sterile bachelor pad, was now our home. Alex's graphic prints hung on the walls next to my minimalist art. A second toothbrush sat permanently in my bathroom holder. Our nights were filled with the simple, domestic intimacy of cooking dinner together, arguing over what movie to watch, and falling asleep in each other's arms. Work was no longer a place of hiding. I was Jade, full-time. Some days I wore dresses and full makeup. Other days, I wore stylish women's jeans and a simple blouse with my hair pinned back. My wardrobe had become a reflection of my mood, not a requirement of my identity. My colleagues knew me as a Jade, a talented and reliable programmer. Jordan was a name in an old file, a ghost from a past life. One Saturday afternoon, Maya came over. Our weekly lessons had long since been replaced by sisterly hangouts. We sat on my balcony, sipping iced tea and watching the city bustle below. "You seem calm," she said, studying my face. It was true. The constant hum of anxiety that had been my lifelong companion was gone. "I am," I said, leaning back in my chair and soaking in the warm sun. "I feel settled, like I finally fit in my own skin." "I knew you'd get here," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of the woman you've become, Jade." Hearing her say that, so simply and with so much love, filled my heart to the brim. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, the unspoken depth of our shared journey hanging in the warm air between us. She had been my catalyst, my guide, and now she was simply my sister, my best friend. Later that evening, after Maya had left and Alex was out picking up groceries, I found myself standing in front of my full-length mirror, the same one where this journey had truly begun. I wasn't wearing a wig or makeup. I had on a pair of soft, comfortable lounge pants and one of Alex's old oversized t-shirts. My short hair was tousled. My face was bare. For years, I had looked in the mirror and seen a stranger. First, it was the boy who never felt right, the man who felt like an imposter. Then, it was the exhilarating but foreign image of Jade, a beautiful woman who I was still learning to become. But now, for the first time, I looked in the mirror and saw me. I saw Jordan's bone structure and Jade's softened expression. I saw the strength I'd built through years of hiding and the grace I'd found through years of exploration. I saw the love of my sister, the acceptance of my partner, and the quiet courage of my own heart reflected in my eyes. There were no more halves, no more conflicting identities. There was just one person, whole and complete. The shame that had started this journey, born from a secret moment in a black lace bra, felt like a lifetime ago. It had been the seed, and from that dark, hidden place, something beautiful and authentic had grown. A smile touched my lips. A real, easy smile. I was not a man in a dress. I was not a secret. I was a woman, standing in the light of her own living room, waiting for the man she loved to come home. And I was finally, wonderfully, peacefully myself.